All right, now to MMA, where it appears that the rift between Jon Jones and UFC President Dana White will lead to a new light heavyweight champion. Jones tweeted Sunday afternoon that he plans to give up his UFC belt and step away from fighting. Jones and White have been beefing through social media for a while now, and last night after UFC Fight Night on ESPN, White shared some of his thoughts among the back and forth.
Being the greatest of all time doesn't mean you get $30 million. Being able to sell. Jon Jones has done a lot of things to himself. He's saying, in one of his tweets, he was saying that I tarnished you? You've done a very good job of tarnishing you. I'm always looking at what Jon Jones could have been. He could have been the LeBron of the sport. He could have been literally that big. The stuff that he's been through to show up and basically demand $15 million or $20 million or $30 million, it's crazy.
All right, so again, that was Saturday night. Jon Jones saw those comments, and then he went to Twitter shortly after midnight Sunday morning saying, quote, "You're talking all that big guy stuff about not caring. Put your money where your mouth is and release me from that contract." All right, to get a little more context of this beef between Bones Jones and Dana White, we bring in Ariel Helwani here to SportsCenter. Ariel, from the people that you've spoken to over the last several hours in the wake of this public dispute continuing between these two, how serious is Bones about giving up this belt?
Yeah, and that's a fair question because we've seen this a few times over the years in combat sports and in MMA in particular. I spoke to Jon's manager, Abraham Kawa, who told me that Jon is 100% serious when he says that he is willing to vacate this title and just essentially sit on the sidelines until they re-engage with him and pay him what he thinks he's worth. I spoke to Abe earlier today when the tweets came out. I spoke to him just moments ago before we went on the air here and asked him again, is he 100% serious? And he said, yes, he is 100% serious. I haven't heard him like this in quite some time. He is willing to vacate this title and not fight again until they re-engage, as he mentioned in his tweets.
Ariel, typically when you have a dispute between two parties, the truth is way closer to the middle than to either side. And Dana White saying that Bones Jones wants Deontay Wilder money for his next fight, which would be like $30 million, especially if he goes up to heavyweight to take on Ngannou. But then Bones is like, nah, I'm not asking for Wilder money, but he didn't say how much money he was asking for. In terms of money, like what type of payday is Bones really looking for here?
Well, you know, it's important to remember that Jon Jones right now, if you look at the UFC, and the UFC doesn't make its purses public, but based on my knowledge and reporting, he's probably the third highest paid fighter in the UFC behind Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov. He mentioned in a tweet a few days ago that he makes around $5 million plus, and that's his purse, and then he'll get more money based on how well his pay-per-views do. And so, as he said, he's not looking for $30 million, but, and I don't want to speak for him, he wants a bump in pay because he feels like, hey, if you're going to pay me the same amount that you paid me to fight at 205, where I've been the king of the division for the past 9 years and fight guys like Dominic Reyes, Thiago Santos as of late, you're going to pay me that same amount to then go up and fight a guy like Ngannou in a division I've never fought him before against a guy who's won 4 in a row and is knocking people out in 20 seconds. Like, what's the point here? Where's the incentive for me? You know, why should I do this? You have to actually, you know, incentivize me to move up and take this risk. And he feels like this is a conversation that's been had in the past, and he feels like they promised him that if he did move up, they would, you know, compensate him. And right now they're saying that they're not going to do that. They're going to pay him what his contract states, and that's why he's upset.
You know, it's been said, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. Well, this clearly wouldn't make dollars for the UFC, but right now it's not making sense to Dana White or Bones Jones.
there's nothing to fight about. You could have asked for $1 more. If it's the guy that's writing the check decides that's absurd, then it's absurd. The guy you're asking to write a check gets to decide if that dollar amount is fair or not. There is no other judge. Well, that word of absurd really upset Jon. Said I didn't ask for anything absurd. That's a lie. And I have an obligation to not let you lie to the fans. Jon Jones, as a man of integrity, has an obligation to the fans. Okay, great. I mean, he was in handcuffs 3 weeks ago. He didn't have an obligation to anybody. He has an obligation to the fan to set the record straight that it was not an absurd ask. Well, the problem with that, the person writing the check is the one that gets to decide if it's absurd or not. So under poetic license, of course Dana's right. But Jon had to set this straight. So, you could have let this go. Who cares? They have differing opinions. And the decision maker decided. Well, no. Decision maker really didn't like being called a liar. And there's a lot of things you can say about a guy. You call a guy a liar, he's got to defend himself. And so Dana did it. He came out and said, look, what do you want to do? Take lie detector tests? You sent text messages. I have this in writing. I'm not going to release them. That's not what I'm doing. But there's also no room for lack of clarity here. It's in writing. Regardless of what was said on the phone call, which nobody can prove or disprove, and maybe a game of telephone happened, and maybe something's lost in translation. Text messages are still here. Jon then declares, release the text messages. What? Jon, if you're the one that sent them, you release them. You've got them, you release them. So you can start to see where the wheels are falling off the bus, and now they're fighting about very ridiculous things. I mean, in all fairness. But Jon goes further. He calls his boss by name a effing liar. He calls BS, but he says the whole 2 syllables, all right? I'm the one shortening it here for the family version. He then 3 messages later declares that the NFL treats their athletes way better, and he has evidence, which is his brother. Now, of course, he never breaks down what he makes on a night versus what they make on a night, because he would be making more, a lot more. The fact that he only does 2 matches a year versus their 16 games plus postseason never factored in because he can't do math. But at any rate, he then tells you, after calling his boss an effing liar and asking for a release, that if you don't see it his way, and this is a broad statement to the masses, you don't know business.
Think that this man just went 25 rounds with one of the greatest welterweights that the UFC has seen.
He would never have gone 25 rounds. That's virtually impossible. He went 25 minutes, Mikey.
Listen. It's been an explosive night. It's maybe not my brain cells around.
Mikey wants to go 25 rounds. Mikey want to kill Gilbert Burns.
I'll do 25 rounds.